The red numbers on the closing statement were so wrong that I thought somebody had accidentally added an extra zero. I was sitting alone in the conference room of my real estate office on West End Avenue, 20 minutes before a young couple named Owen and Claire Holloway were supposed to sign for their first home, when I noticed a $96,400 lien attached to the property they were buying. The problem was, the title had been cleaned 3 days earlier, the Holloways had never borrowed that amount, and the creditor listed beside the lien was a private lending company I had never heard of called Cumberland Bridge Capital. I called the title attorney immediately and said, "Paul, tell me this is a clerical error." He went silent for several seconds, clicking through records on his computer, and then asked me a question that made the skin tighten across the back of my neck. "Marcus, didn't your wife refer these people to Cumberland Bridge?" "My name is Marcus Reed. I was 47 years old, I owned a small real estate agency in Nashville, and until that Tuesday morning, I believed my wife's worst financial habit was ordering expensive skincare products and forgetting to return clothes that didn't fit." Megan was 45, polished without being flashy, and so naturally convincing that people often told her things they would never tell me. We had been married for 19 years and had 2 children, 18-year-old Lily and 16-year-old Noah. Megan occasionally helped at my agency by organizing client events, answering inquiries when my assistant was overloaded, and introducing nervous buyers to lenders she claimed could think outside the box. I never paid her a salary because she insisted she was only helping the family business, but I gave her full access to our household accounts and a company card for approved expenses. That arrangement had survived for nearly 8 years without an obvious problem. At least, not one I had noticed. Megan mentioned a financing consultant, I told Paul, keeping my voice low. She said he helped buyers clean up credit issues. She never said anything about private loans. Paul exhaled through his nose. This lien was filed using a promissory note carrying what looks like Owen Holloway's electronic signature. The money was supposedly released 6 months ago. Released where? An account at Volunteer Community Bank ending in 8841. I didn't recognize the account. I asked him to delay the closing without alarming the couple, then walked into my office and locked the door. My pulse had become a hard, repetitive knock behind my eyes. There are moments when your mind protects you by offering ridiculous explanations. Maybe Megan had made an innocent referral. Maybe Cumberland Bridge was legitimate. Maybe the Holloways had hidden a loan because they were embarrassed. I wanted any answer that did not require me to examine my own marriage. Then I remembered the certified letter Megan had grabbed from our mailbox 2 weeks earlier. She had laughed and called it a stupid warranty scam, but instead of throwing it away, she folded it into her purse. I remembered her getting angry when I asked why our joint savings account had earned less interest that quarter. She told me the bank had changed the rate. I remembered the new password on the laptop we kept in the kitchen, the 3 evening calls she took from the back porch, and the way she had started checking the brass carriage clock in our living room whenever money came up in conversation. It had belonged to her father, and she had never cared whether it worked before. Now she wound it every Sunday and stared at it as if it were counting down to something. If you have ever trusted someone with both your heart and your bank accounts, I want you to imagine how quietly terror enters the room. It does not always arrive as shouting or broken glass. Sometimes it arrives as a 6-digit number in red ink while the air conditioner hums above you and your wife's name waits silently at the edge of a document. I searched Tennessee's business registry for Cumberland Bridge Capital. The company had been formed 11 months earlier by a registered agent in Franklin. Its mailing address was a private mailbox near Green Hills. One manager was listed, Daniel Voss. I knew that name. Daniel was a financial consultant Megan had introduced at our Christmas client mixer. He was in his early 50s, with silver hair, expensive teeth, and the habit of holding eye contact 1 second longer than necessary. Megan had described him as a friend from a nonprofit committee. I had shaken his hand, offered him bourbon, and allowed him to stand inside my business while he studied every person in the room. My stomach contracted so sharply that I had to lean against the desk. Still, I did not call Megan. That was the decision that saved me. I wanted to demand an explanation, but 19 years in real estate had taught me that people reveal the truth most clearly when they believe the deal is still moving in their favor. I printed everything, placed it in an empty property folder, and called a divorce attorney named Evelyn Hart, whom one of my brokers had used 2 years earlier. I told her I needed an urgent consultation involving possible marital fraud and business exposure. Her receptionist found a cancellation at 2 that afternoon. Then I called Megan and made myself sound irritated but ordinary. Closing got pushed, I said. Title issue. I'll probably be late. She paused before asking, which closing? It was a tiny question, but it carried too much interest. The Holloway's place in Bellevue. Another pause. Is it serious? Probably just paperwork. Well, don't let it ruin your day, she said, suddenly bright. Lily's graduation dinner reservation is confirmed for next Friday. That's what matters right now. Lily's graduation. Megan had talked about it constantly for months. She had booked a private room at a restaurant overlooking the Cumberland River, ordered custom invitations, and spent nearly $4,800 from what she called her personal event budget. I had assumed she was emotional because our oldest child was leaving for college. Now her words sounded different. That's what matters right now. I met Evelyn Hart in a glass-walled office overlooking downtown Nashville. She was 60, compact, silver-haired, and so calm that I trusted her before she finished reading the first page. She asked precise questions: who controlled our accounts, whether Megan could sign on behalf of the business, whether we had a prenuptial agreement, whether either of us had inherited property, and whether I had ever authorized her to refer clients for commissions. When I finished, Evelyn removed her glasses and said, "Do not confront your wife. Do not transfer large sums yet. Do not access accounts that are solely in her name, and do not open private mail addressed only to her. We need evidence collected legally. Do you think she stole from those buyers? I think your wife's name is close enough to a potentially fraudulent loan that you should behave as if every conversation may eventually be played in court." That sentence stripped away the last comfortable excuse. Evelyn brought in a forensic accountant named Raj Patel and gave me the number of a licensed investigator, Thomas Bell. By 4:30, Raj and I were reviewing every account I legally owned or jointly controlled. The first discovery was our savings balance. I had believed we had $238,000 set aside, including money for Lily's college tuition and an emergency reserve for my agency. The real balance was $31,742. Megan had manipulated the household spreadsheet for almost 3 years, copying old balances forward and fabricating interest entries so I would not notice the withdrawals. She had transferred $206,800 in increments ranging from $2,900 to $17,500. Some went to the Volunteer Community Bank account ending in 8841. Some paid credit cards I had never seen. One payment of $28,000 had gone to a luxury condominium development in Tampa. Another $14,600 went to a cosmetic clinic in Brentwood. There were hotel charges in Atlanta, designer purchases, and repeated transfers to Daniel Voss. But the amounts alone were not what broke something inside me. Raj found an education account opened when Lily was 6. Megan had drained all but $412 of it. Then he opened Noah's custodial account. Empty. I stared at the screen while my fingers went numb against the edge of the table. "That money came from my mother," I said. "She left it to them." Raj did not offer false comfort. He simply documented the transfers and said, "We're going to trace every dollar we can." Let me pause here, because this was the moment when the betrayal stopped being about a bad marriage. Megan had not merely lied to me. She had taken money entrusted to our children, hidden the theft behind spreadsheets I thought she maintained for the family, and apparently connected my clients to a company filing suspicious debts against them. Rage would have been easier. Rage burns hot and gives you something to do. What I felt was colder. It was the understanding that the person sleeping beside me had treated our entire life as an account she could liquidate. That evening, I drove home with copies of the statements sealed in Evelyn's office. Megan was in the kitchen arranging white flowers for Lily's graduation dinner. She wore a blue blouse I had bought her on our anniversary and hummed while trimming the stems. "How bad was the title problem?" she asked without looking up. I opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of water, and forced my hand not to shake. "Annoying, but Paul's handling it." "Good." She smiled. "I knew you'd fix it." Then Noah came downstairs asking for $40 for a school event, and Megan immediately said, "We need to be careful this month. Your father's business has been unpredictable." She said it while standing 10 feet away from the woman-shaped absence where more than $200,000 had disappeared. I gave Noah the money and told him to have fun. Megan watched me closely, perhaps checking whether I would challenge her. I kissed her cheek instead. That was my mask. For the next 6 days, I played the husband she believed she had already outsmarted. I discussed graduation logistics, complained about traffic, and asked whether she wanted salmon or steak for dinner. At night, she slept beside me while Thomas Bell tracked Daniel Voss and Raj reconstructed the transfers. I barely slept. I would listen to the brass clock ticking in the living room and wonder what deadline Megan had built inside her head. Thomas found the first answer on Thursday. Daniel maintained an apartment in the Gulch, but he also owned a house outside Knoxville with a wife who believed he traveled to Nashville for legitimate investment work. Megan had visited his apartment 11 times in 3 months. The investigator photographed her entering with document envelopes and leaving hours later. There was no revenge partner and no desire in me to create one. I did not care whether Megan loved Daniel, slept with him, or merely considered him useful. The financial trail mattered more than whatever happened behind his apartment door. On Friday morning, Thomas followed Megan to a storage facility near Berry Hill. After she left, he used public records and a contact at the facility to confirm she had rented a climate-controlled unit under her maiden name. We could not legally open it, but we did not need to. Security footage showed her moving suitcases, framed photographs, boxes of clothing, and 2 pieces of furniture into the unit over the previous 4 months. She was not preparing for a temporary separation. She was building a second life one box at a time. That afternoon, Raj uncovered something even worse. The Holloways were not the only clients connected to Cumberland Bridge. 7 households that had worked with my agency had received loans, liens, or credit products through Daniel's company. In 4 cases, electronic signatures appeared inconsistent with documents in our own files. In 2 cases, closing refunds had been redirected into accounts linked to Megan. The total questionable exposure was $684,300. One of those households belonged to a widowed schoolteacher named Patricia Ames, who had trusted Megan because they volunteered at the same church fundraiser. Another belonged to a young veteran and his pregnant wife. The secret had reached far beyond my children and my marriage. Megan had used my reputation as the doorway. Could I lose the agency? I asked Evelyn. If regulators believe you participated or ignored warning signs, yes, she said. But you came to council immediately, preserved evidence, and stopped the Holloway closing. We're going to disclose strategically and cooperate before anyone can frame you as part of it. Evelyn coordinated with a federal fraud attorney, the title company, and a detective in the Metro Nashville Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. We prepared emergency motions to freeze marital assets and accounts connected to the transfers. Raj located the Tampa condominium deposit and another $73,000 sitting in Cumberland Bridge's operating account. My job was to keep Megan calm until the filings were ready. On Sunday night, she stood in our bedroom wearing a silk robe, packing jewelry into a velvet case she claimed she wanted professionally cleaned. I watched her through the mirror and asked, "Are you happy?" Her hands stopped for half a second. What kind of question is that? Lily's graduating. Noah will be driving soon. Things are changing. Megan closed the case and smiled at my reflection. I'm happier than I've been in years. I nodded as though that answer reassured me. Later, after she fell asleep, I lay awake listening to rain strike the windows. The legal strike was scheduled for Thursday morning, one day before Lily's graduation dinner. I still did not know why Megan had chosen that particular milestone, but I could feel the answer approaching. It was in the storage unit, in the Tampa deposit, in the jewelry case, and in that brass clock she kept winding. By Tuesday, Thomas obtained photographs of Megan and Daniel meeting at a coffee shop in Franklin. He could not record their private conversation, but he photographed the papers spread between them. One page showed airline reservations. Another showed a lease application bearing both their names. Then, as they stood to leave, Megan dropped a folded sheet beside the table. A barista picked it up and called after her, but Megan waved and said it was trash. Thomas retrieved it after she left. It was a handwritten checklist. At the top, in Megan's unmistakable handwriting, were 4 words, "After Lily walks Friday." Beneath that, she had written, "Tampa keys. New phones. Closed Nashville accounts. Daniel wires balance. Marcus served Monday. Tell Noah after arrival." I read the list twice, then a third time, because some truths are so ugly your mind keeps rejecting their shape. She planned to watch our daughter receive her diploma, smile for photographs, attend the dinner I was paying for, and then disappear to Florida with Daniel before serving me divorce papers. She planned to leave Noah behind and explain it by phone. And somewhere inside those Nashville accounts was whatever remained of our children's money and the proceeds taken from families who had trusted my name. I want you to sit with that image for a moment, a mother applauding at her daughter's graduation while counting the hours until she abandoned both of her children. That was when I stopped hoping there might be a frightened, remorseful version of Megan buried underneath the fraud. There was only a deadline now, hers and mine. She thought Friday belonged to her. By sunrise Thursday, my attorneys intended to take it away. At 7:12 Thursday morning, while Megan was upstairs steaming the cream-colored dress she planned to wear to Lily's graduation, Evelyn texted me 3 words, "The order signed." A Davidson County judge had approved temporary restraining orders freezing the joint accounts, the Tampa condominium deposit, the volunteer community bank account, and any funds traceable to Cumberland Bridge Capital. The order also prohibited Megan from selling, transferring, concealing, or destroying marital and business property. At almost the same moment, investigators served a preservation demand on the storage facility, meaning every box, suitcase, document, and piece of furniture Megan had quietly moved there would remain exactly where it was. Daniel's company accounts were being frozen through a separate emergency action, and the title insurer had begun contacting every client whose transaction might have been compromised. I stood in our kitchen reading Evelyn's message while Megan walked downstairs in bare feet and asked whether I wanted coffee. "Sure," I said. My voice sounded normal, which surprised me. She poured 2 cups, added oat milk to hers, and began describing the seating arrangement for Friday's dinner. Lily wanted to sit near her grandparents. Noah did not want to wear a tie. Megan thought we should arrive 45 minutes early because parking near the arena would be terrible. She spoke with the efficiency of a woman planning a celebration, not an escape. Her phone rang at 7:19. She glanced at the screen, declined the call, and placed the phone beneath a folded dish towel. At 7:21, it rang again. At 7:23, 3 messages arrived in rapid succession. The smile stayed on her face, but her left hand tightened around the coffee mug. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just the florist. Persistent florist. Graduation season," she said. "Everybody's panicking." At 7:28, she excused herself and carried the phone into the laundry room. I heard her whispering through the door, though I could not make out the words. When she returned, the color had drained from her cheeks. "I need to run an errand." "What kind?" "The restaurant needs the final payment in person." "I thought you paid it Tuesday." She stared at me. It lasted only a second, but I saw calculation move behind her eyes as clearly as a shadow crossing a window. "The gratuity deposit," she said. "I forgot that part." She hurried upstairs, changed clothes, and left without finishing her coffee. Thomas was waiting 2 streets away. He followed her first to Volunteer Community Bank, where she remained inside for 14 minutes, then to another branch in Brentwood, then to an ATM attached to a grocery store. She tried 3 separate paths to the same money and found every one blocked. At 8:37, Daniel called me directly. I let it ring twice before answering. "Marcus, it's Daniel Voss. We met at your Christmas event." "Of course. What can I do for you?" His voice carried a thin layer of friendliness stretched over panic. "There seems to be a misunderstanding involving one of your clients. I'd like to resolve it privately before attorneys make it expensive for everybody." "Which client?" "The Holloways." "Interesting. My lawyer says there may be 7. Silence. Then he cleared his throat and said, "I don't know what Megan has told you." There it was. Not we. Not our company. Megan. The moment pressure arrived, he reached for her body to throw in front of the train. "She hasn't told me anything," I said. "Then perhaps you and I should meet without her. You'll need to arrange that through Evelyn Hart." His breathing changed. "You hired Evelyn. Have a good morning, Daniel." I ended the call and forwarded the details to Evelyn. 5 minutes later, Megan came through the front door so hard that the framed family photograph beside it trembled against the wall. She found me sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee. "Did you do something to our accounts?" she demanded. "Why would you ask me that? My card was declined." "Maybe the bank changed something." I used the same excuse she had given me when our savings interest stopped making sense. She recognized it. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I watched the exact instant she understood that the mask was gone. "Marcus," she said slowly, "what did you do?" "I stopped you." Her eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the front door, then toward the brass carriage clock. It showed 8:46. She looked at it as if she had missed a flight. "I don't know what you think is happening," she said. "Sit down. I have calls to make. Your accounts are frozen. Cumberland Bridge is frozen. The storage unit is preserved by court order, and the Tampa deposit has been flagged. Running out the door won't make any of that disappear." Her knees seemed to lose their strength. She gripped the back of a chair but did not sit. For 6 days, I had imagined this confrontation in 100 different forms. I thought I might shout. I thought she might cry. Instead, we spoke in voices so controlled that someone passing outside could have mistaken us for a couple discussing an insurance claim. "You invaded my privacy," she said. "You stole from Lily and Noah. That money was part of the household. It was left to them by my mother. And I was going to replace it. With what? Money from the Holloways? From Patricia Ames? From the other families you and Daniel buried in fraudulent debt?" She flinched when I said Patricia's name. That told me she knew exactly who had been harmed. "Daniel handled the loan documents," she said. "I only made introductions. Money went into an account you controlled. Because Daniel's business banking wasn't ready. And then it paid for your Tampa condo, your credit cards, your clinic, your hotels, and whatever you packed into that storage unit." She finally sat down. Her face changed in stages, anger first, then fear, then something close to self-pity. "You don't understand how trapped I've felt." I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny left in me. "You had access to more money than most families in Nashville will ever save. You had a home, a husband, healthy children, and the freedom to leave whenever you wanted. You weren't trapped. You wanted to leave rich. You controlled everything. I gave you access to everything. It was always your agency, your clients, your reputation. I was just Marcus Reed's wife. So you used my clients to finance a new identity? It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone. You put liens on their homes. Daniel said the loans would be repaid before anybody noticed. By whom? She looked away. That was the first question for which she had no prepared lie. Now, I want you to notice something, because it took me longer than it should have to recognize it. Megan still had not apologized. She had described herself as trapped, minimized the fraud, blamed Daniel, and complained that my work made her feel invisible. But she had not once asked whether Lily's tuition was safe, whether Noah's inheritance could be recovered, or whether those 7 families might lose their homes. Her fear was not remorse. It was fear of consequences. Were you leaving after graduation? I asked. She looked toward the clock again. Who told you that? You did. You wrote it down. Her face folded as if I had struck her. That paper was private. You threw it on the floor of a coffee shop. I changed my mind about parts of it. Which parts? Leaving Noah behind. Serving me after you reached Tampa. Closing the Nashville accounts. I was going to call him. He is 16. My voice rose for the first time. You were going to abandon your 16-year-old son by telephone. I knew you'd take care of him. The sentence landed harder than anything else she had said. She knew I would take care of him. She had built her escape around the certainty that I would remain responsible while she took the money and ran. Before I could answer, someone knocked on the front door. Megan stood abruptly. Who is that? Probably the process server. She stepped backward as if the envelope itself might injure her. The server confirmed her identity and handed her the divorce petition, the asset restraint order, and notice of an emergency custody hearing. Evelyn had advised filing immediately because Megan's travel plans and written intention to leave Noah created a clear risk of abandonment and removal. Megan scanned the first page, then stared at me. You filed for divorce? Yes. Before Lily's graduation. You scheduled your disappearance for after it. You're going to destroy her weekend. No. You did that. I'm making sure you can't destroy her future too. She began crying then, but even her tears seemed aimed at changing the negotiation. She said we could fix this privately. She said Lily would hate me if I exposed her mother. She promised to transfer the Tampa condo to me, as if she had bought it with her own money. She offered to attend counseling. She said Daniel had manipulated her and that she had planned to end their relationship once they were settled in Florida, which was such a strange defense that I simply stared at her. So you intended to betray him too? I asked. That isn't what I meant. I think it's exactly what you meant. Her phone rang again. Daniel. She declined the call. He called once more, then sent a message long enough to fill the preview window. I could read only the first line from across the table. You said Marcus never checked anything. Megan turned the phone face down. You should answer him, I said. He seems worried. He's trying to protect himself. So are you. Marcus, please. We have 19 years together. You converted 19 years into a spreadsheet and started withdrawing. She lowered her voice. What have you told the children? Nothing yet. Then don't. Let Lily graduate first. Give me 48 hours. To do what? She had no answer, because both of us knew what 48 hours meant. Time to destroy evidence, shape a story, move whatever the court had not found, and convince Daniel to coordinate their lies. You are not staying here tonight, I said. Evelyn arranged for civil standby if you want to collect essential belongings. The court order gives me temporary use of the house. You can't throw me out of my own home. The order is in your hand. She read the relevant section, then crumpled the edge of the paper. I had packed a small suitcase with clothing, toiletries, and medication under Evelyn's direction. Megan stared at it near the staircase and whispered, "You planned all of this. You planned more." She took the suitcase but refused to leave until a deputy arrived. With the deputy present, she became calm and wounded, telling him there had been a misunderstanding about family finances. He did not respond beyond explaining the order. She removed the velvet jewelry case from the bedroom, but the deputy made her leave several pieces that were listed as disputed marital property. At 10:16, Megan walked out of the house where we had raised our children and climbed into her SUV. Thomas later told me she drove directly to Daniel's apartment. She stayed 12 minutes. Then she came out carrying the suitcase, which Daniel had apparently refused to let her bring inside. By noon, he had retained his own criminal attorney. By 1, that attorney contacted investigators and indicated Daniel was willing to discuss Megan's role in exchange for consideration. The man she planned to build a life with had abandoned her before lunch. But the day was not finished. At 2:30, Evelyn received notice that Cumberland Bridge's electronic records had been preserved. Daniel's company email contained spreadsheets listing not 7 potential victims, but 23. Some had never worked with my agency. Several had been referred by Megan through church events, school fundraisers, a breast cancer charity auction, and a neighborhood homeowners group. 2 women listed as investors were close friends who believed Megan had placed their retirement money into short-term real estate notes. Together, they had given her $180,000. One of them was her older sister, Caroline. The secret did not merely implicate more victims. It implicated people who had unknowingly recruited victims for her. Megan had encouraged friends, volunteers, and even Lily's former dance instructor to recommend Cumberland Bridge, promising referral bonuses that were sometimes paid using money from the next person. What looked like a hidden spending problem was beginning to resemble a network of forged loans, diverted escrow funds, and fraudulent investments held together by Megan's social credibility and Daniel's paperwork. The total exposure climbed past $1.4 million before sunset. I sat in Evelyn's conference room while each new name appeared on Raj's list. Every one represented a person who might have trusted Megan because they knew me, knew our children, attended our church, or had eaten at our table. How did I not see this? I asked. Evelyn folded her hands. Because honest people usually look for ordinary explanations first. That is not the same as being responsible for her choices. It feels like responsibility. Then use that feeling correctly. Help identify the victims. Preserve your records. Tell the truth early. So I did. We voluntarily turned over client communications, referral emails, company card statements, and access logs. I called my errors and omissions insurer. I informed my 6 employees that an investigation involving Megan could affect the agency, but I did not accuse anyone publicly or share details the attorneys told me to protect. My office manager, Denise, listened without interrupting and then said, "Marcus, 3 months ago Megan asked me whether old client identification files were deleted after closing." I felt another door open in the dark. "What did you tell her?" "That we archived them." "Did she ask for access?" "Yes. She said you wanted addresses for anniversary cards." Denise had granted her temporary access to an archive containing driver's licenses, signatures, employment information, and closing documents. The access log showed Megan downloaded 41 files over 2 evenings. That discovery connected my agency directly to the suspected forged documents, but it also created a clean record of who had accessed them and when. Evelyn immediately preserved Denise's account and notified investigators. At 5:40, Megan's sister Caroline called me. She was crying so hard that I initially could not understand her. Megan had borrowed $90,000 from her the previous year, supposedly to invest in an off-market apartment renovation near Vanderbilt. Caroline had used part of the life insurance money left after her husband died. She had also convinced a coworker to invest. "Marcus, please tell me there's a building," she said. "Please tell me she didn't make the whole thing up." I searched the address on the agreement Caroline emailed me. It belonged to a parking garage. I closed my eyes. Caroline, I'm so sorry. Did you know? No. She said you personally guaranteed it. The document carried a digital version of my signature. It was better than the Holloway forgery, but it was not mine. Caroline stopped crying and became frighteningly quiet. I helped her, she said. I told people she was safe because she was married to you. You didn't know. Neither did you. We stayed on the phone for several minutes, two people trying to understand how our trust had been repackaged and sold to others. Caroline agreed to speak with investigators and provide every message Megan had sent her. She also told me something that changed the timeline. Megan had first mentioned moving to Tampa almost 18 months earlier. She said she was considering starting over after Lily finished school, and asked Caroline whether a mother was selfish for wanting a life that did not revolve around her family. Caroline thought Megan meant opening an event planning business. She had even encouraged her. There's something else, Caroline said. Last Christmas, she told me that once Lily graduated, you'd finally release a trust from your mother. She said it would be around $500,000. There is no $500,000 trust. She believed there was. I remembered a conversation from years earlier when my mother, already ill, mentioned that part of her estate might remain in trust until Lily turned 18. The final medical expenses consumed most of it, and what remained went directly into the children's education and custodial accounts, the same accounts Megan had drained. But Megan must have believed a larger payment would arrive around graduation. Suddenly her deadline made sense. She had not chosen Lily's milestone solely because it created emotional cover. She had been waiting for money she thought I had concealed from her. She intended to remain married until the imagined trust was released, gain access to it, empty the accounts, and leave. When the money never appeared, she accelerated the loan scheme instead. I want you to imagine discovering that your spouse had placed an expiration date on your marriage years earlier, not because love had died in one terrible moment, but because she was waiting for a payout that did not exist. Megan had attended birthdays, anniversaries, school concerts, and family vacations while privately measuring the distance to Lily's graduation. The brass clock was not just an odd habit. It was the perfect symbol for what she had been doing to all of us. Counting down. That night, I had to tell my children enough of the truth to stop Megan from controlling the story. Lily and Noah returned home together around 7. Lily carried her graduation gown over one arm and was talking about a classmate who had decorated her cap with rhinestones. Then she saw my face and stopped. "Where's Mom?" she asked. I sat them at the kitchen table, the same table where Megan had lied to me that morning. I told them their mother and I were separating, that serious financial misconduct was being investigated, and that none of it was their fault. I did not mention Daniel's apartment or every stolen dollar. I wanted facts, not revenge, to shape the conversation. Noah asked the question I had feared. Did she take our college money? I looked at him, and the pause answered before I could. Lily covered her mouth. She did. My attorneys are trying to recover it, I said. I will make sure both of you are okay, even if I have to rebuild every dollar myself. Was she going to leave? Lily asked. We can talk about that after graduation. Dad, was she going to leave after my graduation? I could not lie to her. Yes. Lily stood so quickly that her chair scraped backward across the floor. So tomorrow was just a goodbye party she wasn't going to tell us was a goodbye party? Her eyes filled, but her voice stayed sharp. Was she even going to come home afterward? No. Noah looked down at his hands. Was she taking me? I swallowed. Her written plan said she would call you after she arrived. He nodded once, then walked out of the kitchen without speaking. I found him 10 minutes later sitting on the back steps in the dark. I sat beside him. For a while, neither of us said anything. Finally, he asked, how long did she know? I don't know. Did she ever actually want us? Yes, I said, because I believed that somewhere in the past she had. But wanting somebody once doesn't excuse what you do to them later. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. Are we still going tomorrow? Only if Lily wants to. We should. Mom doesn't get to steal that too. The next morning, Lily came downstairs wearing her graduation dress and carrying the brass carriage clock. She placed it on the kitchen counter. I don't want this here when I come home, she said. Then she looked at me and asked, can it just be the three of us today? I told her yes. What I did not yet know was that Megan had already decided she would not accept being excluded quietly. She had spent the night constructing a new story in which I was an abusive financial controller, Daniel was an innocent advisor, the missing money was a marital dispute, and she was the mother being cruelly prevented from attending her daughter's graduation. At 8:04 Friday morning, she posted that version publicly. By 8:20, hundreds of people had seen it. By 8:32, she was standing outside the graduation venue with a local lifestyle blogger filming her, ready to turn Lily's most important morning into her own public defense. I saw Megan before she saw us. She was standing near the main entrance of the arena in a pale gray suit, one hand resting on the handle of the suitcase Daniel had refused to let into his apartment, while a woman with a phone mounted on a stabilizer filmed her beneath a row of blue graduation banners. Parents and students flowed around them carrying flowers, balloons, garment bags, and paper cups of coffee, but Megan had positioned herself where Lily could not enter without passing directly in front of the camera. The lifestyle blogger was a woman named Sienna Blake, someone Megan knew through Nashville charity events. Sienna ran a local social media page built around restaurant openings, neighborhood disputes, and carefully packaged personal scandals. I could hear Megan saying, I just want to watch my daughter graduate, but my husband has cut me off financially and is using his influence to keep me away from my children. Lily stopped beside me. Noah muttered, You've got to be kidding me. For 1 second, I considered turning around and taking them through another entrance, but Lily handed me her garment bag and walked straight toward her mother. Turn that camera off, she said. Sienna lowered the phone slightly. Megan opened her arms. Baby, thank God. Your father wouldn't let me contact you. You texted me 14 times. Because I was worried. You were worried about what Dad told me. Megan glanced at the camera and softened her voice. This is not the place to discuss adult financial issues. Lily looked at the phone, then back at her mother. You brought a camera. That sentence punctured the entire performance. Several people nearby slowed down. Sienna lowered the phone completely, but Megan reached toward it and said, No, keep recording. I want there to be a record that I came peacefully. I stepped forward and said, There is no order preventing you from attending the ceremony. There is an order preventing you from entering the house and moving frozen assets. Nobody invited a blogger. Megan's expression changed when she realized I would not physically block her. She had arrived prepared to perform exclusion, and I had removed the obstacle she needed. You told the children lies, she said. I told them you drained their accounts and planned to leave after graduation. Both facts are documented. Those accounts were marital property. They were custodial and educational accounts funded by my mother's estate. Sienna looked at Megan. You said he emptied the accounts. That's his interpretation. Bank statements aren't an interpretation, I said. Megan's eyes moved around a growing circle of onlookers. She had spent years mastering rooms like this, knowing when to smile, when to lower her voice, and when to make another person look unreasonable. But she had never practiced losing control in front of an audience she invited herself. Lily, she said, whatever happened between your father and me has nothing to do with how much I love you. Lily's face stayed still. You plan to leave tonight. I needed space. In Tampa? Megan looked at me. He has investigators following me. Do you understand how disturbing that is? Did you plan to call Noah after you got there? Lily asked. Megan did not answer. Noah stepped beside his sister. Just answer her. I was going to explain everything when the time was right. From Florida, he said. After taking our money. A woman holding a bouquet near the entrance whispered something to her husband. Megan heard it and snapped, "This family matter is none of your business." Sienna quietly stopped her recording. "Megan," she said, "you told me Marcus had fabricated a reason to keep you from the ceremony. You didn't mention frozen accounts or Tampa. Because the details are complicated. Then I shouldn't be filming them. You promised you would help me." "I promised to document a mother being denied access." "He just said you're allowed inside." Sienna detached her phone from the stabilizer and walked away. That was the first visible crack in Megan's reputation, and she had created it herself. Still, Lily's graduation was not a courtroom, and I refused to let the confrontation consume it. I told Megan she could attend if she sat separately and did not approach the children again unless they initiated contact. She called that cruel, but there was a sheriff's deputy managing security 10 yards away, so she accepted. We entered together until the concourse split, then Megan disappeared toward an upper section while Noah and I found our seats. When Lily crossed the stage in her blue gown, I stood and applauded until my hands hurt. Noah shouted her name. Across the arena, Megan stood too, but Lily looked toward us. Afterward, the three of us took photographs beside a magnolia tree outside the venue. Lily smiled in some and cried in others. She asked me to hold her diploma while she hugged Noah, and in that ordinary movement, one child trusting me with something she had earned while the other leaned against her, I understood what Megan had failed to calculate. A family is not held together by whoever controls the money. It is held together by whoever remains when staying becomes difficult. We canceled the private restaurant room and ate at a small hot chicken place Lily loved in East Nashville. She wore her graduation gown over the back of her chair, Noah kept stealing fries from her basket, and for almost 20 minutes we talked about college housing instead of fraud. Megan sent a message to the family group chat saying, "I hope you're all proud of excluding me." Lily removed her from the group. Later that afternoon, Sienna posted a brief correction stating that she had been given incomplete information about a private family dispute and had deleted all footage involving the children. She did not name the fraud investigation, but screenshots of Megan's original post had already circulated among parents, clients, and people from the charity groups. Megan deleted her account by evening. The silence lasted until Monday's emergency hearing. Evelyn and I arrived at the Davidson County Courthouse with 2 binders of financial records, Thomas's report, the handwritten escape checklist, and affidavits from Raj, Denise, Caroline, and Paul, the title attorney. Megan sat across the aisle beside a lawyer I had never seen before. She looked exhausted, but still carefully composed. Daniel was absent. His lawyer had already begun cooperating with investigators. The family court judge was not deciding criminal guilt that morning, Evelyn made that clear. The questions were narrower: temporary custody of Noah, use of the marital home, access to funds, preservation of property, and whether Megan posed a risk of dissipating assets or leaving Tennessee. Even within that limited scope, the evidence was devastating. Evelyn showed the transfers from Lily's and Noah's accounts, the Tampa deposit, the storage lease, the airline reservation, and Megan's checklist. Megan's attorney argued that the note was a private brainstorming document and that she had no definite intention to abandon Noah. The judge read the line "Tell Noah after arrival" aloud, then asked Megan where "arrival" referred to. Tampa, she admitted. "And when were you scheduled to arrive?" "Saturday morning." "The day after your daughter's graduation?" "Yes." "Did your minor son know you intended to move?" "Not yet." "Did his father?" Megan did not answer until the judge repeated the question. "No." Temporary primary custody went to me, with Megan receiving scheduled contact subject to Noah's willingness and the advice of a family therapist. I received exclusive use of the house, and the financial restraints remained in place. The judge ordered both parties to preserve devices and financial records and barred Megan from contacting my agency's clients about the investigation. Outside the courtroom, she followed me toward the elevators. "Marcus, please," she said. Evelyn stepped between us, but I told her it was okay. Megan looked smaller than she had at home, stripped of the rooms and objects that once made her seem untouchable. "Daniel is blaming everything on me," she said. "That surprises you? He created the documents. And you supplied the people. I can prove he pressured me. Then prove it to investigators." She lowered her voice. "If we stay married, spousal privilege could protect some of our conversations." Evelyn immediately said, "That is an inaccurate and deeply unwise thing to discuss in a courthouse hallway." But I understood what Megan was really asking. She was not asking me to forgive her. She was asking whether the remains of our marriage could still function as legal shelter. "There is no marriage left to protect you," I said. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside with Evelyn and watched Megan remain in the hallway, alone beside her attorney. Over the next 3 weeks, investigators searched the storage unit under a warrant. Inside, they found furniture for the Tampa condominium, clothing with tags still attached, $22,000 in jewelry, client files copied from my agency, prepaid phones, 2 laptops, and a locked document case containing signature templates for 19 people. They also recovered notebooks in which Megan tracked prospective victims by relationship, church, school, real estate, charity, family. Besides several names she had written words like trusting, recently widowed, cash available, and listens to Marcus. Seeing my name used as a sales tool for fraud made me physically sick. The notebooks also clarified the roles. Daniel designed the loan products, created shell companies, and handled forged documents. Megan identified people with money or usable credit, gained their confidence, obtained personal information, and redirected funds. They paid older obligations with new money whenever someone became suspicious. Megan's spending accelerated the collapse. She had charged nearly $310,000 in personal expenses over 18 months, far more than Daniel expected, and then began pulling money directly from the scheme without his approval. Their relationship was intimate, but it was never stable. Messages showed them insulting each other, threatening exposure, and arguing about who would control the remaining funds in Florida. The Tampa future Megan sacrificed her family for had never really existed. It was two dishonest people imagining they could safely trust each other. Daniel negotiated first. He handed over passwords, emails, account maps, and recordings of Megan discussing the clients. In one recording, she laughed that Patricia Ames would never question a document carrying my signature because Marcus has the face people trust. In another, Daniel asked whether I might notice the missing education funds. Megan replied, "Not before Lily graduates. He thinks stability means never checking behind me." When Evelyn played that recording privately for me, I felt heat crawl up my neck. Not because she called me predictable, but because she had mistaken trust for stupidity. There is a difference between failing to watch someone and being incapable of seeing them. Once I looked, her entire construction lasted less than a week. Megan was charged months later with multiple counts related to fraud, identity theft, forgery, and theft of property. Daniel faced his own charges and pleaded guilty under an agreement that required cooperation and restitution efforts. I will not pretend every dollar came back. Fraud does not reverse neatly because the truth is discovered. The Tampa deposit was recovered, the jewelry was sold through court-supervised proceedings, and funds in several linked accounts were returned to a restitution pool. Insurance covered parts of certain real estate losses. My agency's insurer settled with affected clients where our compromised files had contributed to the harm, even though the evidence showed I had not authorized Megan's access for those purposes. I sold a small rental duplex I had planned to keep for retirement and used part of the proceeds to restore Lily's education fund and Noah's custodial account immediately. My attorney told me I was not legally required to make them whole before restitution was resolved. I did it anyway. Those accounts had represented a promise from my mother, and I refused to make my children wait for adults and courts to untangle what should never have been taken. The agency nearly collapsed. 2 brokers left because they feared the publicity. Several sellers cancelled listings. Online reviews appeared accusing me of participating in Megan's scheme, even though no investigator ever alleged that I had. For 90 days, I worked from 7 in the morning until midnight, answering attorneys, insurers, regulators, frightened clients, and reporters. Denise stayed. So did 4 other employees. Paul, the title attorney, referred an independent compliance consultant who rebuilt our document access system from the ground up. Every download was logged, sensitive files required 2-person authorization, and family members were permanently barred from informal access. I also invited every affected agency client to meet with me personally. Some shouted. Some cried. Patricia Ames sat across from me in the same conference room where I had first seen the red lien and asked, how could she look me in the eye at church? I told her I did not have an answer that would make it sensible. Then I promised I would cooperate until her title was cleared. It took 8 months, but it was. The Holloways closed on their house 6 weeks late after the false lien was released. They chose to keep me as their agent. On closing day, Owen placed the corrected statement on the conference table and said, "This one looks better." The numbers were black. I had to look away for a second before answering. Meanwhile, Megan's public version changed every few weeks. First, she claimed Daniel had manipulated her. Then she said I had neglected her emotionally and forced her to seek independence. Later, she suggested that I had known about the investments until they failed. Each new story contradicted the previous one, and every contradiction found its way into court records, online discussions, or the social circles she was trying to enter. Caroline stopped speaking to her except through attorneys. Their parents removed Megan from a family trust that contained very little money but enormous symbolic weight. The church fundraiser committee issued a statement confirming that no future financial activity would involve her. A women's networking group revoked her membership. Even people who might have forgiven an affair or private debt could not overlook the fact that she had targeted widows, friends, young families, and her own children. But the consequence that affected her most did not come from a judge or a social media post. It came from Lily and Noah. Lily began college that fall at the University of Tennessee. I helped her carry boxes into a dorm room so small that we had to stack her shoes beneath the desk. When it was time for me to leave, she hugged me and said, "Thank you for not making graduation the last good thing before everything fell apart." Noah started therapy and initially refused all contact with Megan. I never encouraged hatred. I told him he could love his mother, be angry with her, forgive her someday, or choose distance, and none of those decisions had to be made for my comfort. After 4 months, he agreed to one supervised meeting. Megan spent most of it explaining herself until he interrupted and asked, "Why didn't you take me with you?" According to the therapist, she answered, "I thought you'd be more stable with your father." Noah replied, "Then you knew who the better parent was before you left." He ended the meeting early. I wish I could say that was the end of our conflict, but Megan's criminal case, our divorce, and the fight over restitution were still moving through separate courts. The sharp strike had stopped her escape, protected the remaining assets, and exposed the scheme. The slower reckoning was only beginning. At our divorce deposition 6 months later, Evelyn placed the brass carriage clock on the table. Lily had wanted it gone, and investigators had returned it after finding nothing hidden inside. Evelyn asked Megan why she had photographed it beside handwritten countdown dates on her phone. Megan stared at the clock for a long time before saying, "It reminded me that I wouldn't be stuck forever." Evelyn then asked, "Who was keeping you stuck?" Megan looked first at me, then at her own attorney, and finally at the clock. Her answer was barely audible. "Everyone." That one word told me more than 19 years of explanations ever could. To Megan, every person who trusted her had eventually become an obstacle between her and whatever she wanted next. I was an obstacle. Our children were obstacles. Her sister was capital. My clients were opportunities. Daniel was transportation. And once you understand that someone sees people as tools, you stop waiting for an apology that recognizes their humanity. The final divorce hearing was scheduled for the following spring, and Megan arrived asking for half the agency, spousal support, and reimbursement for what her attorney called uncompensated contributions to my business. Evelyn arrived carrying the financial trail Megan seemed to believe everyone had forgotten. The final hearing lasted 2 days, and on the first morning, Megan entered the courtroom wearing a navy dress and the same delicate gold earrings she had worn to our 15th anniversary dinner. She looked composed enough that a stranger might have assumed she was there to divide an ordinary marriage, but the illusion disappeared as soon as Evelyn began tracing the money. Tennessee is an equitable distribution state, which meant Megan's demand for half of everything was not automatically impossible, but equitable did not mean blind. Evelyn showed how Megan had dissipated marital assets, stolen from custodial accounts, forged my signature, diverted business opportunities, exposed the agency to insurance claims, and attempted to remove money and property from Tennessee before filing for divorce. Raj testified that the documented losses attributable to her conduct exceeded the value of her possible share of several remaining assets. My business valuation expert explained that the agency was worth substantially less after the scandal than it had been before, partly because of cancelled listings, compliance expenses, settlements, and reputational damage created by Megan's actions. Her attorney tried to characterize her work at the agency as years of unpaid labor. Denise testified that Megan had been offered formal employment twice, declined both times, used company resources freely, and accessed archived client files by falsely claiming I had requested anniversary mailings. Paul testified about the Holloway lien. Caroline testified about the forged personal guarantee on the non-existent Vanderbilt investment. The most painful testimony came from the court-appointed guardian reviewing Noah's welfare. She described Megan's written plan to leave for Tampa without informing him, her failure to include him in her housing application, and her statement that she assumed I would care for him. Megan stared at the table through all of it. When her attorney called her to testify, she admitted moving money but insisted that she believed Daniel's investments would eventually replace it. She said the Tampa condominium was intended as a temporary retreat, not a permanent home, despite the joint lease application, airline tickets, storage unit, prepaid phones, and checklist. She claimed she had taken client data only because Daniel assured her the transactions were legal. Then Evelyn asked the simplest question of the entire case. Mrs. Reed, if you believed the transactions were legal, why did you falsify the balances in your husband's household spreadsheets? Megan looked toward the judge. I didn't want him overreacting before the returns came in. For nearly 3 years. Marcus is conservative with money. You drained accounts belonging to your children. I intended to restore them. Before or after you left Tennessee? Megan's attorney objected, but the judge allowed the question. Megan pressed her lips together. Before anyone needed the money. Your daughter needed it for college the same month you planned to leave. I knew Marcus would cover her tuition. There it was again. Her entire defense rested on my reliability. She stole because she believed I would replace what disappeared. She planned to abandon Noah because she believed I would remain. She risked the agency because she believed my reputation could absorb the damage. She treated my character as an unlimited line of credit. Let me pause one final time before I tell you how the ruling came down, because revenge stories often make victory sound like a single dramatic moment. Real victory is less cinematic. It is sitting still while somebody who underestimated you discovers that your patience was not weakness, your decency was not permission, and your silence was being used to gather facts. The court awarded me the house, the remaining agency interest, and primary custody of Noah. Megan received no ownership stake in the business and no spousal support. Her share of other marital property was sharply reduced after the judge credited the dissipation of assets and losses caused by her misconduct. Most recoverable proceeds connected to the Tampa deposit, jewelry, storage unit property, and linked accounts remained directed toward victims and restitution. She kept personal clothing, a modest retirement balance that could not legally be treated like stolen cash, and a vehicle with more debt than equity. The judge did not leave her with literally nothing, because courts are not designed to deliver theatrical punishment. They are designed to apply evidence. The evidence left her starting over with very little. Our divorce became final 19 years and 9 months after our wedding. I expected to feel triumphant when Evelyn handed me the signed order. Instead, I felt tired, relieved, and strangely quiet. Winning the case did not give me back the woman I thought I had married. It did not erase Lily's expression when she learned her graduation had been used as an escape deadline, and it did not make Noah stop wondering why his mother had planned a future without him. Legal victory closed the door. Healing meant learning how to live without standing beside it. Megan eventually accepted a plea agreement in the criminal case. The exact sentence involved incarceration followed by supervised release, continuing restitution obligations, and restrictions on handling other people's financial information. Daniel received his own sentence. His cooperation reduced it, but it did not rescue the consulting career he had used to manufacture credibility. Cumberland Bridge Capital was dissolved, and the names of both defendants appeared in public records that could be found by anyone performing a basic background search. That became the consequence Megan could never outrun. After her release, she tried to rebuild in 3 different places. First, she applied for an administrative role at a property management company outside Chattanooga. Someone recognized my agency's name during the background check, found the court records, and the offer disappeared. Then she moved to northern Georgia and joined a women's professional group under her maiden name. Within a month, a member whose cousin knew Patricia Ames connected the story to her, and Megan was asked to leave. Later, she tried online dating. According to Caroline, at least 2 men ended contact after searching her name. I never organized those consequences. I did not contact her employers, dates, or new acquaintances. I did not need to. She had spent years borrowing trust from other people's reputations. Now her own reputation arrived before she did. My agency survived, though it changed. I reduced the number of agents, stopped chasing rapid growth, and rebuilt around referrals from clients who understood what had happened. We created a fraud prevention workshop for first-time homebuyers, teaching them how to verify liens, lender identities, wiring instructions, and electronic signatures. Patricia attended the first session and surprised me by standing at the end to tell the room, "Ask embarrassing questions. Honest professionals won't punish you for checking." The workshop became a quarterly event, and eventually local attorneys and title officers volunteered to participate. I did not become famous or wealthy from it. That was not the point. I became useful in a way I had not understood before. The experience that nearly destroyed my agency gave us a reason to protect people more carefully. 2 years after the morning I saw that red number on the Holloway statement, Lily was thriving at college. She called me at least twice a week, usually when she needed practical advice and sometimes when she simply wanted to tell me something ridiculous her roommate had done. Noah finished high school with stronger grades than any of us expected after such a brutal year. When he crossed the stage, Lily and I shouted loud enough to embarrass him. Megan was permitted to attend and sat several sections away. She did not bring a camera, create a scene, or approach him afterward. Noah had sent her a clear message through the therapist: she could watch, but the day belonged to him. After the ceremony, the 3 of us drove to Percy Warner Park with sandwiches, took a photograph beneath the stone steps, and spent the evening talking about Noah's apprenticeship with a residential construction company. At one point, Lily looked at the picture on her phone and said, "We look like ourselves again." That was the closest thing to a perfect ending I could have asked for. I did not rush into another relationship. For a while, I had confused being needed with being loved, and I wanted to understand that before sharing my life with anyone else. Therapy helped me admit something uncomfortable: Megan was responsible for her deception, but I had built part of my identity around being the man who could always stabilize every crisis. That made it difficult to acknowledge when my own home was unstable. I learned to check accounts without shame, set boundaries without apologizing, and let my children see me uncertain without pretending uncertainty meant failure. The brass clock never returned to our house. Lily and Noah agreed that neither of them wanted it, so with the court's permission, I sold it along with other disputed property and placed the money in the restitution fund. It brought only $680. That seemed appropriate. Megan had treated the clock like a symbol of the future she deserved, but in the end, it was just an object she had assigned too much meaning. The real measure of those years was not what she had been counting down toward. It was what remained after she left, 2 children who knew I would show up, a business built back honestly, and a version of myself that no longer mistook blind faith for love. If you take anything from my story, let it be these 5 lessons. 1. Trust should never require financial blindness. Megan hid more than $200,000 behind a spreadsheet I accepted without checking. Reviewing shared accounts is not an accusation, it is a basic responsibility to everyone whose future depends on them. 2. When evidence appears, protect it before demanding an explanation. If I had confronted Megan over the Holloway lien that first morning, she and Daniel might have moved the money, destroyed the client files, emptied the storage unit, and shaped their stories together. 6 days of restraint protected 23 victims and my children's remaining future. 3. Pay attention to who absorbs the cost of someone else's freedom. Megan called herself trapped, but her escape was funded by Lily's tuition, Noah's inheritance, Caroline's life insurance money, and the homes of people who trusted her. Freedom purchased by secretly ruining others is not freedom. It is exploitation. 4. Reliability should be honored, not exploited. Megan's plan worked only if I remained the father who stayed, paid, repaired, and protected. I am still proud to be that man, but I learned that being dependable does not mean allowing someone unlimited access to my labor, reputation, or forgiveness. 5. Protecting children does not mean hiding every painful truth from them. I gave Lily and Noah facts without turning them into weapons against their mother. The truth hurt them, but it also prevented Megan from convincing them that her abandonment was my invention, and it allowed our relationship to rebuild on something solid. Now I want to know what you would have done at the critical moment. Comment 1 if you would have stayed silent long enough to let the lawyers freeze everything, comment 2 if you would have confronted Megan the moment you found the first lien, or comment 3 if you have ever discovered that someone was using your trust as cover. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm always amazed by how far stories like this travel. If this story kept you listening, leave a like and subscribe for more stories about betrayal, consequences, and rebuilding a life without surrendering your self-respect. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional patterns, fully rewritten in Nashville to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or actual events is entirely coincidental.